welcome to VSN Collegiate here. We're joining you after a couple of other good games here on March Madness. We got a lot to get into. We'll talk about the big picture here overall, but it's our fourth day in a row here doing this. We've been going over all the games. It's been great watch them. Finish it up today with two very good games with Miami advancing, San Diego State advancing over Creighton. We'll touch on all that. We'll get into the Final Four, preview that a little bit. I also got some fun questions for these guys, and we'll get you out of here on a Sunday night. With that said, I got Casey Breyer with me again over here. Casey, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Doing very good, man. Awesome day of sports. Loving it.
Final day of a good weekend there. What do you got there, Nico? How you doing?
Oh, been very good. Another weekend of just literally doing nothing but watching basketball. I can never complain when that happens. So, yeah, I was very, very much enjoying every second of this weekend.
Chris, feeling like we need a run. Probably that's the feeling like it feels like on a Monday. How are we doing over there in Nashville?
Doing well. Been a great weekend of watching some lesser-known teams advance to the biggest stage in college basketball. Been enjoying some baseball too. So, been a good weekend for me.
Yeah, we're getting close to that time of year. Let's start right with the guys. Let's get right into it here. It just ended here a little bit ago. We got Miami. And we got San Diego. Not Miami and San Diego State. Miami and Texas just finished up there. A very good game. Miami. I just feel like they hang in there. And then they just attack at the end. They make these big streaks. Casey, they have this ability to score late. They've proven that, and they can score in spurts. I got to be honest, it looked like Texas kind of had them a little bit there. In the back of your mind, you knew they weren't dead, but it just felt like, okay, Texas, and I was just calling him Jerry Rice for fun, but Mr. Rice, it was killing him over there. I don't know, what'd you think of the game overall? And again, just Miami staying strong this whole tournament, being able to get to the Final Four for the first time ever.
Yeah, no, it was a great game. Very good game, high intensity. First half was really back and forth. A lot of up and down play. The second half really kind of Texas struggled. They just couldn't put the ball in the hoop. And then Miami, though, you think about it in this day and age where, the three ball is everything. They didn't hit one 3-point shot the entire second half, which is incredible. And Miller played an absolutely fantastic game. 9 of 9, I think, from the field, 13 of 13 from the line. I mean, just a remarkable game. Wong came on strong for them.
Yeah.
Pack didn't really shoot his best game, but you're always going to have one guy that's taken out of it. But Texas, they really struggled to find buckets towards the end. The three ball wasn't falling like it was in the first half for them. And give Miami credit, though. They battled, man. They hung in there, and without their big guy, Omer, which was surprising, they made a run to actually kind of keep them in the game. So, yeah, it's kind of surprising. They just got hit with the hurricane in that second half, man.
Chris, Texas's bench there early on, they were outscoring them 21-2 there in the first half. That seemed like that was going to be that was just a crazy number there to think of 21-2. I know Rice had a lot to do with that, but still, just a good start to it. You were like, well, maybe Miami's going to have to rely too much on their starters, especially to me, like I said, the pace they were at. Your thoughts on the game there?
I kind of thought Texas's bench was a little bit shorthanded because they had to bring one guy in for Dessous that wasn't available today.
Yep.
You just wonder how much that actually affected Texas not having him, and how that might have changed the game.
What do you think of that, Nico?
I think this game, look, a couple things that I really take into account, especially these Elite Eight matchups, is the inexperience of Rodney Terry really showed. Obviously, Jim Larrañaga being a George Mason when they made the Final Four. Look, he knew that the game was never out of reach. Being down 10 with 8 minutes and 30 seconds left, not many teams, and especially left, would have been able to muster that comeback and then have a whole 16-point swing to end the game on those last 8 minutes. So look, this Texas team. Once Carr went down with, I believe it might have been a wrist injury or hand injury, whatever it was, it really just seemed as though their offense just stalled. And they really, really struggled to get everything going once he had that small injury. And they relied so heavily on him that when Miami was just trying to punish the defense with their inside scoring, they just did whatever they want to do offensively, and then Texas was a stagnant offense. So, kudos goes to Isaiah Wong too, the ACC player of the year, and what he did with Miami and Larinaga. But it feels like Texas really just blew this entirely, and having a 10-point lead, 8 minutes away from the first Final Four in I believe it's 20+ years, and you don't.
It felt like they got tight. They felt like watching it, right? It just felt like they got tight a little bit. Yeah, you could say, well, they didn't make any shots, but you just sometimes in basketball, you're passing up shots that you normally would take. Just little things like that where you're like, well, I don't want to take this, but
and especially with Rodney Terry, obviously that inexperience. He's a great coach. He's done a hell of a job.
Oh yeah,
taking over for Chris Beard when all that happened earlier on in the year. But you can tell the experience where it comes from, being able to calm his guys down, being like, hey, there's 8 minutes left. We're up 10. Take the full 30 seconds. Look, when you're up by double-digit points at the end of basketball games, NBA, college, high school, whatever you are, you work the shot clock and get the best shot possible. It seemed as though Texas did not do that at all, and they were making 4 shots and not using the clock wisely. When Miami got to their pace, and they were just running up and down, getting the boys excited, and Texas just had no answer at all.
Chris, I thought Jordan Miller played really well there too. I thought he stepped up big for Miami, especially in their first half. Can I ask you about that? Somebody help me out with that play. It was like a minute left in the game, and it sure looked like the Miami player went over the back. But somehow the Miami – what did I miss with that foul? Did I miss something there? Should that have been a foul on the other player? It seemed like a big part of the game, or wasn't it tied? And then Miami goes to the line, makes 2 free throws. I thought that was kind of a questionable call there. I thought that was a big part of the game with a minute left. Anybody see that part of the game?
So what typically happens, a lot of times you'll see a guy go over the back like that.
Yeah.
And then the player underneath is going to reach around and grab him. And every time they do, they're going to get called for a hook and hold.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, okay. That just seemed like I didn't have it. I had the volume down at that time, and I just like from seeing it, you're like, that's not over the back. And I'm like, how did he end up at the line?
If you just stand there and take it, they're going to call that over the back.
Yeah.
But if you reach around, they're going to get you every time. And it's sad to be that way, but I get it because there's a lot of people been hurt with a hook and hold type foul.
Casey, Miami's first Final Four. Unbelievable football dominant right over the years. We said we wanted Alabama out. Nico, we said Texas, get out of here. You wanted the schools that win football games to get out of here. Miami, well, they win football games, but they've been down lately, so this counts, I guess, a little bit. But what do you think? We'll move on here to the next game. They're getting there for the first time here. What are your kind of expectations for them moving forward?
Man, it's going to be an adventure. Larinaga, I think the poise that he's had, and he's been coaching forever. And George Mason, they made it 17 years ago. Seems crazy to think about, but he's been doing it. And these games, if they come down to the second half of the second half, 10 minutes less, and it's close, you gotta have a lot of confidence in that poise of your coach. And I think it's going to be a fun run. It's already been a fantastic run for them. Just to see the kids celebrate. You can tell the emotion, man. It takes a lot out of you just to make it to this point physically too. So it's hats off to them.
So I wanted to throw something in on Miami too.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the game, they only took 8 3-point shots for the entire game.
Yeah,
and to me, that highlights a lost art form in college basketball, which is the mid-range jump shot. Nobody takes them anymore because everybody's jacking threes all day. Give me that old school 2-point basket every time down the court, and 9 times out of 10, I'm going to beat you jacking threes all day.
It's funny, and that's the thing that'll be interesting moving forward is kind of team beat them with the 3 ball if they don't hit any more than that. But that's a very interesting take with only 8 threes. I mean, most teams are getting that up. Well, I know in the NBA they're getting that up in 5 minutes. I know the Warriors are getting out here. They're getting that up in 4 minutes, Casey. They're getting 8 shots, 10 threes up for sure.
And the lefty, I watched it early, made Jack like 4 up in less than 30 seconds.
He's like a lot of it. All right. So let's keep it moving here. We'll go to San Diego State. They end up beating Creighton, fellas. I thought Creighton had this one. I thought it was a really good opportunity. Casey did it with last night with Chris too. We thought and Susie here, and we thought it was a really good opportunity for Creighton to really pull it out here. Kind of just with the lineup they had, kind of getting their point guard back from last year. Not saying San Diego State was a bad team or by any means in that regard, but man, I was so impressed with San Diego State's man-to-man defense. Like, especially at the end, there was that one possession where I think it was Tremble makes the floater, and then he's just staying in front of Newhart the whole time, and then he claps his hand after he passes the ball. And if you play basketball, it's that little like inner segment of like, yeah, you got nothing up. I own you right now. Like, and he couldn't get by him. I just thought that was the interesting part of the game was like, especially in the second half. You talk about playing just gritty basketball and the rest letting him play. I thought for the most part too. We can talk about the ending here. I talked about that ending there in a second, but I thought for the most part that was a really physical game there. Nico, what'd you think of it?
Look, these are two tough teams that a lot of people had losing obviously a lot sooner than where they got to this point. And seeing Creighton play in person here in Denver when they did, I thought this team had all the makings for a Final Four run. Obviously, I think that they had the size of Colbrenner in the middle. They had the knockdown shooting with that lefty number 55. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but they were a very, very deep team. But one thing San Diego State did so well against Brandon Miller in Alabama, and also this tonight against Creighton was they made everyone else beat them. They said, you know what, we're going to throw a Trammell, we're going to throw our best defenders on your top guys and say, hey, everybody else go try and beat us. And for the most part, Creighton was able to do that. Creighton was getting their chances, getting good shots off. And then you run into the situation where San Diego State just wouldn't go away. You look at all their matchups throughout this tournament that San Diego State went through, and they ran into some very, very tough teams. Charleston, obviously a team that at the point had the most win or tied for the most wins in college basketball. Then you had a tough game against Furman, which they come through. And then look, they weren't tested until they played Bama. But when that Bama game came, they seemed as though they were like, yes, we can play with everybody. And they had that belief tonight. And Creighton I mean, we'll get to the last second foul here in a minute, but it just felt as though
Go ahead. What's your thoughts on it? I thought it was a bad call. I thought it was a little soft in the time.
I thought it was too, and I saw a few takes out there that I thought were very interesting. The main take I saw was look, if that's a foul in the first quarter of the game, it's a foul at the end of the game. So then the argument this individual had against that was, look, if you watch the NFL game, college football game, a Hail Mary at the end of the game, 95% of those Hail Marys are pass interference. They obliterate the shit out of each other. And it is an all-out melee to get the ball. And they never call pass interference. You let the play go. Obviously, completely different situation. But at the same time, if it's a tic-tac foul, I let it go, in my opinion. I let it go. If it is an obvious arm slap, go from there, then you call it. But when it's a guy on the back, unless the guy completely sells it, I let it go. I'm in favor of letting the guys handle it out. It's a different scenario when the game's tied also, and having it be such a big deal with a tied ball game in the last second of the game. But I mean, having that type of play and a great game ending like that is just very unfortunate.
Chris, what's your thoughts on that foul there?
So I'm going to take the diplomatic approach, and I'm going to quote Greg McDermott on the call.
All right, let's hear it.
Two teams played their tails off, and officiating is part of the game. We are not going to go there. We lost the game because we didn't do enough, and San Diego State did. He also added that he was not given an explanation at the end of the game. Now, my whole take on that is he's 100% correct. If they make another play somewhere else in the game, that last foul don't matter. So kudos to him for being a stand-up guy regarding that call.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think because at the end of the day, like, if it happened to you, you're not going to complain. You know what I mean? So I think, good coaches kind of understand that. I just hate to see a good game. And like as a fan, I guess that's kind of the way more it is. So, but it shouldn't affect the rest of that. Right? Case, what's your thoughts of the San Diego State advancing? Like I said, tough D, man. They really locked up in the second half, and they gave them no driving lanes at all.
Yeah, so I'm going to go full circle and kind of start back to the beginning of the game a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
when Creighton pushed it to about 9 points and it looked like San Diego State, they had no offense going. I was like, oh, Creighton, Chris, we were talking about, it's just like they had a good path. It's set up perfectly for them. They've had to travel the least amount. San Diego State's had to travel the most amount, play hellacious games. They bank on defense. And once Creighton pushed it to 9, I was like, I don't know, man. San Diego State just they don't have enough in the tank. And then, man, they cut that thing back and chipped away. And you can see Creighton like, damn, man, we can't get rid of these guys. Now it's just a back and forth battle. It's a war. And Creighton, they tried. They have some good, man, number 23, I'm blanking on, man, he can ball, man. They got some good players over there. San Diego State, though, Tremel, man, like you said, they just took Mar out the game. And I know his wrist at the end, he could tell he just wasn't being aggressive. He wasn't shooting. He was just trying to facilitate. So I think that kind of hurt Creighton, too, on their offensive side. But then to get back to the play at the very end, I mean, if you watch the entire game, it was a brutal slobber knocker game. And there's a lot of calls that were like, I've seen them called, I think, 99 out of 100
there
times
were
in the college tournament, like bumps that are called at half court or just little subtle plays. And one guy like ran into and tripped over. They called traveling. Usually that's always a given like foul for tripping. But at the end, if you're going by the letter of the law, it is a foul. But if you watch that whole entire game, I just don't think you can make that call at that point. I think the game deserved to go to overtime at that point, and I spoke to us, and the only way San Diego State was going to maybe pull this off is they kept it in the 50 and low 60 range. And that's what they did. They made it ugly.
Yeah.
And Lamont Johnson made some big-time buckets, too. So.
And they made clutch free throws too for the most part down the stretch. I don't know why I'm so impressed with the defense. I mean, you give me a defensive stance all day, that's gonna get me fired up. Okay, that'll get me fired up all day. On a Sunday evening, you give me a defensive stance, I'll go to war. I'll go to battle for you. I don't know. That play with that Travel will stand out to me. They got a good. We'll kind of get into their matchup next round here in a second. Real quick on Creighton, I thought. I just like you said, they handled it well with the loss, but man, I think the guy you guys were talking about, Nico, I think you were talking about, what was it? Alexander. They have Newhart. They have Blake Sherman. And then they have Kamala. Those are probably – that's their starting lineup there. And they have the big lefty. I don't know. I don't believe in those big guys like that. I understand, this – it's a weird argument because, yes, everybody has a center on their team, but they do have to win a championship, somebody. But, there's these certain centers where you're like, man, it's just going to be hard for these teams with their offense around it to win a championship. And at times I just thought, he was good, but I don't know. What do you think, Casey or Nico as Creighton, as they say goodbye to the season here and we move on to the Final Four questions here for you guys?
It goes back to the case that we talked about with last time I was on the show was big men don't win in March. Right, you have to have a guard that can control the game. You can have an all around great big man on your team, but if you don't have a guy controlling the ball, controlling the flow of the game, you're going to run into problems. And it seems as though that San Diego State had more of the guys that were willing to pace the game in terms of getting those big wins. And there's no knock to what Creighton did because obviously, look, they were a top 10 preseason team. They were the last top 10 preseason team left in the tournament. And look, not Dougie McBuckets, but Greg McDermott has done a hell of a job getting those boys in the Big East, getting them into the position they are. And they're a team that consistently year in, year out that is a tournament team, no doubt. But like I said, what you're seeing right now between these last four teams especially is great guard play, great defense. And that's what wins you in March this time of the year.
Yeah, Creighton, I just thought they had a great chance this year. They had the bracket kind of break their way a little bit, and they just couldn't take advantage of it. Sometimes I guess it happens. San Diego State, they get by Alabama, which was their tough game, and then they get a nice little win there with against Creighton to make it to the Final Four for the first time. All right, guys. Hey, I thought it'd be fun before we wrap it up here and do our show. I got with the Final Four coming on here. I'll finish it off with our picks here on the final question here. But I thought it'd be fun to do Final Four question with you guys. I got 4 questions for you guys. We'll go around the table here, and then we'll end it with our picks here, and we'll call it a podcast here. The first one I got here is, what was your favorite game maybe so far from the tournament? Is there one that stood out to you that like early on, second round now, whatever? Is there a game that you just kind of like, I don't know, like right, immediately caught your attention, so far this tournament? Chris, you got anybody there?
I actually do have one. Let me find it real quick.
Well, will you do that? I'll tell you about mine was Furman in Virginia when he threw a cannonball or a grenade. I'm sorry that he had to go out like that, but like, man, like if that's not the worst way to lose a March Madness game, like that one sticks out to me because I don't know, like it's just one of those things. Like, even if you get older, right? Like, that's just March Madness comes around. Like I had success, but man, this grenade pass is this. Or if the other school makes the Furman, every time they make the tournament, I got to see this damn play in that regard. So that game stuck out to me. Chris, you got one there?
So I have actually two favorite games.
All right.
One of them happened in the first round. Kennesaw State and Xavier. Kennesaw State had Xavier, had them beat. I mean, had that 7-point lead with less than 5 to go. Had the game won. Xavier comes back, finishes it off. Great game. The other one is Kansas State and gosh, I'm drawing a blank.
State.
They just played yesterday.
Michigan State.
Yeah, the game yesterday with Kansas State. That was just incredible.
FAU.
FAU, yeah. Two of the best games I've seen in quite some time. I actually think they rival Duke, Kentucky with Leitner hitting a three-pointer at the half court, or Duke and UNLV where Bobby Hurley's slapping the floor on every defensive series that Duke had.
God, I hated Duke.
Great game.
I wanted to slap them every day. I don't know. It's funny. I've been watching a lot of, now that we've been doing this, I've been going back and watching a lot of like old games and stuff that we've been talking about on here. It's funny to see. I don't know, like just the way the game was played back then in college is a little bit different now too. Case, you got a game there that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm biased because we went to the game, but definitely seeing Princeton upset Arizona.
Yeah.
Seeing them beat my best friend's team on his birthday. Misery. It was just, I mean, maybe might not been the most like fluid game, but it definitely had all the makings for the upset. And seeing like, just being in that atmosphere. I've been to an NCAA women's game, but I've never been to a men's game. So it was pretty cool to check that off the bucket list and see a massive underdog beat just such a prestigious basketball school. So that was pretty amazing to watch.
And if you remember, they were down by 12 with 6 minutes left and came
were.
back and won that game.
They went on a 9-0 run in the first half, too. That's what kind of was the thing about Tyler is so tired of this tournament. He wants this tournament right over there. Nico, what game stood out to you here?
Look, we touched on it slightly. Was that Marquise Noel, K-State versus Michigan State, where he dropped the tournament high in assists, 19 assists, and obviously the overtime lob when you're down by 1 and you throw a lob on at the end of the game to take the lead against Michigan State and that great program. I thought that was absolutely crazy. I thought everything that K-State did this tournament was just absolutely electric. I'm sorry, I was sad to see them go because in the history books, Marquise Noel will just be a footnote in this tournament. When in reality, what he did this tournament at 5'8" should have been talked about a lot more. But my other game that I think, obviously, look, these two teams should play every single year. I don't care what the aspect is, and it's UCLA and Gonzaga. Jaime Jaquez, what he did in that showdown against Drew Timme, up by 10, and then you come back, you fight your way back to a point where the game's coming down to the last second. You have that feeling of wow, is UCLA going to get the revenge against Gonzaga from the Jalen Suggs shot, or is Gonzaga going to get the upper hand? And for Mark Few to draw up the Chris Jenkins quote unquote play for Strother, the balls to do that down by 1, not tied, down by 1, and to pull up that logo 3 from Strother to take that 2-point lead was absolutely gutsy. And look, anytime Gonzaga UCLA game is on, I am going to be watching it, plain and simple, because they are not entertaining. So I like that was such an incredible game.
It's funny how there is with college. There's certain matchups, even you don't even know the players, bro. Like, those uniforms are playing. I'm playing. I'm going to see it right there. All right, so those are the my first question here with the Final Four, brought to you by Row One Brand. Use that code VSN15, get 15% off anything in the art gallery. I mean, they probably got some Miami Hurricane stuff there, maybe not basketball stuff there, but we'll see. Maybe they're adding that to the collection. All right, you can make this quicker here. We kind of touched on the game a little bit, but maybe if you got somebody else here that as I kind of answer these questions, what team, player, or coach either surprised or disappointed you the most in this tournament here? Anybody want to take that one here first? I got somebody that disappointed you or surprised you. I mean, for me, Purdue's got to be the biggest disappointment. Like, you're the number one seed. Like, again, we talked about the big guy. We got all that. But to me, it's also that they've been eliminated so much recently, too, early on. Like, there's obviously a flaw going on with some of the way they're playing deep. They've also made a couple deep runs. I know they had that crushing loss to Virginia back in, 19 or something like that. But I don't know. I just thought they didn't show up in that game really at all. Casey already talked about Arizona a little bit, but I'm going to go Purdue as the most disappointment for me as a team aspect there.
My biggest disappointment, it's actually an interesting one, a team that actually won a tournament game. I'm going to go with Kentucky. Look, John Calipari, you have Oscar Tshiebwe come back, who was the SEC Player of the Year last year. You have him return, and this team's a second-round exit, right? Like, look, this Kentucky program is not what it was in the 2010s. You think of all the great NBA players that have come out of Kentucky in the last 10 years. Tshiebwe is one of the better college players that they've had, and to lose to a second round team, obviously K-State was on a magical run. I think Kentucky just did not or exceed expectations at all this year. And look, you can say that they weren't favored to win versus Kansas State. You had the quote unquote best player in your conference, like last year at least. Obviously, Brandon Miller had a different conversation for this year. But you do that with in the SEC. It's supposed to be the Kentucky quote unquote invitational, the SEC tournament, and doing that, having another disappointing season for Kentucky. Calipari might be on the hot seat. For my surprise,
really, you think? I just don't know. I feel like he has a lifetime deal. That's not the case.
I think that it might be time, because look, they haven't been to an Elite Eight since, what was it?
Come to Cal.
2015.
Come to Cal.
So I think it may be a little bit of a hot seat warming there. My biggest surprise, obviously, is the way Texas head coach fought through adversity in his first tournament and getting him this far. Obviously, it was disappointing losing to Miami, but I think Texas is the right track, and I think that Texas, dare I say it, are back in terms of basketball. Those are my biggest surprise and big surprise.
Yeah, it's not good when TJ Ford's out there from 2003.
Some good players come through. LaMarcus Aldridge, Durant.
Yeah. That's true.
DJ Augustine, they've had a few. I mean, elite NBA players,
Fun fact, Rick Barnes couldn't even get Texas to the Final Four with Kevin Durant, and you see what he's doing at Tennessee. He can't get them to the Final Four either.
That on Thursday. He actually said that Thursday why he wasn't taking that. That's Rick Barnes. Every time he loses, man, he takes a lot of heat. Chris, you got somebody there? Somebody else there? Or?
So for a team that disappointed me the most, I have to say Oral Roberts. That team was legit. They played solid ball all year long against some really tough competition at times. They just got a bad draw. They didn't match up with Duke at all. I actually picked them to beat Duke because I thought their shooting touch was going to be too much for Duke. And them 7-footers coming out there swatting 3-pointers all night long, just I was highly disappointed in Oral Roberts. The player that impressed me the most, obviously, Marquise Noel. You score 90-plus points and have 50-plus assists in 4 games. That's just an incredible stretch. I don't think it's ever been matched. I don't think it ever will be matched. And as a coach, I'm with everybody else. I think Coach Cal is the most disappointing coach. He's right when he's saying he might be on the hot seat. I'm down here in SEC country, and I see it every day. He is definitely on the hot seat. And I'm going to name two
Who else
names.
would they want though to be their coach? Like that's
Okay.
the thing. Like I don't understand.
And I was fixing to touch on that. I'm going to
Sorry,
name
I
two
get
names.
excited, Chris. I get excited.
Kentucky fans will not be happy if Cal is gone, if the coach named is not Jay Wright or Billy Donovan. However, I'm going a different route. I think Kentucky should look no farther than two other guys. That's Dusty May and Jerome Tang. I think they would both be great fits. We know Dusty May has SEC experience. He was an assistant at Florida for several years. He knows the Southeast well. I think he'd be the perfect fit at Kentucky because obviously he knows how to coach basketball.
I've always been fascinated with Kentucky basketball. Just even just being out here, like way out here in the Northern California, just like from a distance, you've always had friends like that love them for some reason that are like, you're like, why the hell are you? You grew up in Santa Rosa, California. How the hell do you like Kentucky? They come up with these.
God, the last coach that was even decent over here was, and sad to say, was Mike Montgomery.
I know. So like when they say fire Cal, it's like, man, dude, like I want it. I'd give you Cal in a second. Even for the illegal recruits, give them.
I see Nico over there grinning that I mentioned Dusty May and Jerome Tang for the Kentucky coaching job.
I saw that.
Jerome Tang would be a home run hire. He is the coach of the tournament, in my opinion. Like what he did with Kansas State. I mean.
Yeah.
Look, I would love for him to stay at Kansas State, but there's zero doubt that he is going to be a person that is hot commodity for a big program. What he did with that team, getting those boys to believe and getting them to where they were the last Big 12 team standing, I don't count Texas because Texas can fuck it off. They're just going to the Big 10. But like one of the last Big 12 teams standing, and I think that he would be a home run hire. I really do think Calipari, he's brought NBA talent, but what has it shown for? One national championship in 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Like you could name 2 or 3 different starting lineups of NBA talent from Kentucky the last 10 years and one national championship to show for it. Yes, he's a great coach. Yes, he's a great eye for talent. But Kentucky right now is not in the sweepstakes of second round losses anymore. They want to have that success, and the SEC the last couple of years have had a couple different winners. Obviously, Alabama this year, I believe Auburn last year. So like Kentucky, it was your invitational. What happened, right? What happened? Is this Calipari's time to run to an end, right? It feels as though we're they saying this to compare the two because this coach is still coaching. Rick Pitino in Louisville. Obviously, he left under different circumstances, but it felt as though his run was ending with Louisville, and it was time for new blood. And Kentucky, it may be time to part ways before you get to that point.
I felt like the show just turned into an SEC show over here.
and to take that a bit further and rope it around to the national landscape, you have to know how to play the transfer portal game, which is what college basketball is now. Cal's not playing the transfer portal game.
Yeah.
He's going out and getting these freshmen while everybody else is going out and getting these upperclassmen to play. You put upperclassmen on the floor against freshmen, 9 times out of 10, the upperclassmen are going to win. So you've got developed talent in the transfer portal that all these other guys are getting that Cal's not getting.
To your point, I don't mean to cut you off, but do you think that's because it's hard? Like you can mold an 18-year-old, but once you have older guys, they're not willing to listen to him because he's stuck on his style of coaching. Do you think that's part of it?
I believe that's part of it. And the classic case with the transfer portal, Jerome Tang taking Keontae Johnson, a guy that I thought would never, ever step on a basketball court again, puts him on a limits minute and becomes a star of the team.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to keep it moving here just for the show here, guys. Kate, let me go to you, Chris, with this one first on it. What do you got now that we're done with we kind of finished up the Elite Eight? We'll get moved to the Final Four here. Is there a game in the Elite Eight or Final Four matchup that kind of stands out to you history-wise? It could be like when you're a kid or something like that just you'll never forget. I know a lot of people like the Duke-Kentucky one, obviously. You can obviously have that one as well, but you got one that kind of just stands out here as we're getting ready to start the Final Four in Houston?
Not necessarily an Elite Eight game, but a Sweet 16 game. I'll say it till I meet my dying grave. Jeff Green traveled, period.
I was getting a lot of those tweets today when I posted I posted a picture of Jeff Green in Georgetown, and I got some random ones. I was like, obviously this one is over my head. I missed it. I'm not in on the Vanderbilt thing, but it sounded very personal, so I just did that.
So Vanderbilt played Georgetown in the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
And Jeff Green hits the go-ahead bucket with under a minute to play after taking 4 steps. He traveled.
He was on the Harden move. The James Harden move was in session there.
Yeah, it was bad.
That's funny. Nico, you got one there? A game in the maybe an Elite 8 game or Final 4 game that stands out to you or something else?
Final 4 game, obviously, I'll have to go with Chris Jenkins, or not Chris Jenkins. Sorry, the Marcus Page and
the Warriors will point
that's a final. That's a championship game. Sorry. Either way, my favorite Elite game is one from not that long ago. You guys all probably remember. It's the Luke May game, North Carolina versus Kentucky, where he hits that game winner and a jumper from the side, and the guy shows up in math and chemistry class the next day. It was one game that I thought was an incredible matchup between two blue bloods. Obviously, this year is a little bit weird in terms of no blue bloods in the Elite 8 / Sweet 16 and completely different. But having two high level programs be at the top of their game in Kentucky and North Carolina in Elite 8, that game is one I'll remember.
I got a couple here with it. I got obviously he was the coach today with Miami, but it's one that always stick out to me is George Mason versus Connecticut. That game was very good, and at that time it just felt big for an underdog to make it to the Final Four like that. And they have Rudy Gay, Connecticut. They had a pretty good team on that team. I believe is it Marcus Williams? I believe was their point guard as well, the lefty. So they had a good team. Hilton Armstrong, throwing out some names here to you. They were on there, and then one that local league case. Stanford beating Rhode Island in the Elite 8. When you got the Mark Matson hands over your head picture there. So that's always one with Rhode Island having Lamar Odom at the time. So that's always one that could have stood out to me in 1998. And then recently Virginia on that little miracle shot against Purdue. Over the head little shot right at the buzzer. So the guy that threw the cannonball is going to look at that pass. That's all he's going to remember. He's going to be like, that's the pass right there. Don't remember the other one. Just remember that one right there. That led to a championship.
And to be real, taking it beyond my personal touch with Vanderbilt, Final Four game that I'll never forget. UNLV with the perfect season, double-digit favorite over Duke, and Duke coming back after being embarrassed a year earlier and really taking the fight to UNLV. One of the greatest games I'll ever see.
Chris, I did a show here on VSN, the football one called Talking the Gridiron. Nico's co-host Jimmy would join me basically all season on there. Nico joked on us with there a little bit as well. And we always say that on that show, everything circles back to our own team. So don't worry about that one. It always circles back to our own team. So that's why don't worry about that one bit. All right, let's get to our final question here before we move on. We'll get out of here.
You got to mention Chris Webber in there too.
Oh
yes.
Yeah.
Calling timeout.
Championship game. Yeah, the Final Four. That's a tough one there. That's that'll be for the next round podcast. We get to that one. Championship round memories. That's a bad one. That's an all-timer there. I went back and watched a random one. It was like 1993, Michigan versus Temple. And Temple had Michigan had Jalen Rose, Weber, 94. Weber had left. No, Weber was there. Temple had Eddie Jones, Aaron McKee, and Batee, who was a top 5 pick. And it was actually a good game, watch it back at it. So some of those old games are good. And I was like, man, it'd be nice if college basketball had these guys that stayed 3 or 4 years like that too. Now that are studs like that in college. And all right,
how could I forget Chris Webber, because Vanderbilt just played Michigan and Juwan Howard last week.
And I love how sports line up. I remember they said when he did that, whenever that happened, the Detroit Pistons lost on a 5-second call literally the day of that happened 30 years ago. So only in sports do you have that type of weirdness. All right, let's get to the final thing here. Our picks here. Let's get to the Final Four. We've been doing the shows here, Case. We moved along. We're here. We're at the big dance. The games will start next Saturday there. An unlikely matchup of San Diego State versus Florida Atlantic, the Owls versus the Aztecs. And then we have, who would have thought, and you have Miami of Florida versus UConn. just I don't know. I'd be surprised who had these brackets. Very impressive as you did. Let's go to your picks there, Case. What do you got?
My heart of heart, obviously being from California, on San Diego State, but then the team I've been rolling with the whole time is Florida Atlantic, and they've been nothing but good and proving me right the whole time. So I think it's going to be Florida Atlantic. I know San Diego's got that suffocating defense, and at least I do. I keep saying, well, they ain't going to score enough. They're not going to score enough, but the other team doesn't seem to score enough either. So
there is that part of it.
I think Florida Atlantic does have enough guard play and higher scoring volume throughout their depth of team. I think they got 7 guys that can really fill that stat sheet of at least putting the ball in the bucket. And then on the flip side, gotta go with Connecticut, man. I mean, they smashed everyone by 15 points or more their whole tournament. So, I mean, they've just been rolling people. I just don't see it changing. They just look like they're on a different level than everyone else.
Chris, who you got?
I'm going with FAU, Conference USA, against Miami in the ACC, and have an all Florida national championship game.
I like it though. What do you got, Nico, for yours here?
I have FAU and I have UConn. UConn's been the most dominated team. I mean, everybody they've played.
They really have been.
They haven't let anyone get a chance of beating them. Everyone they've played, they've suffocated and just dominated. I think they are obviously the favorites to win it all. And then obviously I'm going to FAU as well. FAU is the most wins in college basketball now with 35. They know how to win ball games. Plain and simple. They know how to win ball games. And look, talk about suffocating defense. Number 1 defense in the country, Tennessee. FAU was able to get buckets against them. So I think this offense from FAU can sustain this and get to the championship, which would be a very unlikely and fun national championship. I'll tell you that. It's funny, FAU was the darling of the team and then also the most hated team, whether it be beating Memphis, which a lot of people, including myself, had them in the Final Four, and then obviously beating Fairleigh Dickinson as a favorite. No one liked them. And then they play Tennessee, where they're like, oh, you're fun again. And then they play Kansas State. You're like, oh, we don't want you to win. We want Marquise Noel to win. And now it's circling all the way back around to being America's team again, being like, oh, fun 9 seed to win a national championship. Let's see what these guys can do. So yeah, give me FAU versus UConn.
I'm gonna go with San Diego State. I think Florida Atlantics they've been playing well. They've been playing well, but there's something in San Diego State. Maybe it is the West Coast bias here a little bit, as we say, but I just like the way they were hitting shots in that mid-range game, like you were saying, Chris, earlier with those floaters. They were really playing well the last 5 minutes with their mid-range game, and the way they played defense there was incredible. We'll see if Florida Atlantic is going to come down to threes. I know this; they are probably going to take more than 8, so that's going to probably happen to them. They're going to take more than 8. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. The UConn Miami one is we'll probably get into it more a little bit maybe in our preview one, but man, that's going to be an interesting matchup. Just thinking of the speed of Miami, and UConn doesn't mind playing fast a little bit either, but they kind of like to play that rock fight style a little bit too. So there's going to be some fun matchups, and like we said, not really. And you guys said not a blue blood school. Isn't UConn one now? Do they belong in the group? I tweeted today like, are they better? Are they better than Duke the last 25? You know what I mean? Like in our head, we don't think of it like that. But if you look back at 1999, these are 6 Final Four.
A lot of people forget, though, they left the Big East and then came back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they've been there, I would almost say more of a women's school than it has been a men's.
Yeah, they are the women's basketball team. That's plain and simple. Like, when you talk about women's college basketball, it's UConn and then everybody else. It doesn't matter what's happened the last couple of years. But, it's funny, like, we talk about this blue blood. Last year's Final Four, guys, Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, and Villanova. this year's Final Four, Big East school, Connecticut, FAU, Conference USA, San Diego State, Mountain West, and Miami, the ACC. I mean,
God, we need a Gonzaga in there.
Right? Like it's wild. It's wild.
That is crazy to think about. Like, I don't know. Like, I just think UConn now maybe belongs on that level. Over if you look at like where they're at the last. I know they've had some bad seasons, but if you start to go, all right, if you were put on this earth in 1998, UConn would be one of the best college basketball teams that you'd ever see year in and year out. So that's kind of my thought with them. We'll see if they win it this year. I don't know. Like they just find a way, man. They just find a way. So we'll see what happens there with it, gentlemen. Go ahead, Chris.
I got to give Nico some grief here. He
Well,
saw
sure.
me put
I like
he
grief.
saw me put my hand up to my face because I was fixing to say something when he mentioned UConn is women's basketball because I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, but this is the first time in 14 years that UConn will not be in the Final Four in women's
They
basketball.
weren't even in the Elite Eight. First time in 14 years they didn't even make the Elite Eight.
That's
So
crazy.
it's weird. I still think Gino Auriemma's. I mean, he's a legend in his own right. So I don't know. I don't care what UConn has done in the past 2 years. What they did for 10 years with 4 undefeated seasons in a row, I think, or so they won 130 some odd games in a row is enough for me.
It's hard for me just to think UConn. I mean, for me, I'm more of a give me Tennessee a little bit more. Like give me Pat a little bit more. Give me that. So I'm a little biased towards Tennessee when it comes to the UConn rivalry. My mom being a basketball coach, she liked Pat, so we kind of in our household we're a little bit Pat, not as Gino friendly over here as everyone. So that's the way I would look at it.
And Tara, don't forget about Tara.
Yeah, we can't forget Tara as well.
Yep.
Yeah, we can't forget him as well. All right, before we get out of here, a little overtime here. Guys, Nico, what do you guys got going on this week? You guys got any shows coming up? What's going on with you? Where are you watching the games at? You going out of town? You going to the Final Four?
No. I will not be at the Final Four. Jimmy and I travel enough for work. Seeing the games in here in Denver were already nice enough. But yeah, we're myself and my co-host Jimmy Pilato. We're far into the bench at FEOTB Pod. We're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that good stuff. Our shows come out on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And sometimes we'll pop off with live shows. Obviously, we'll obviously dive deep into this Final Four, and then Masters Week is a week and a half away from starting in April. So we'll have to talk about that a little bit too with our buddy Jeremy, who does college basketball with us too. So we'll have that. We'll have NFL draft talk. Obviously, Nugs and Avs are in playoff mode. Obviously, the Nugs beat up on the Bucks last night, and then we have tomorrow a big game against the Sixers and the battle of the MVPs. So we'll be covering all that this week with lots of different stuff because, like I said, we sleep in June because right now it's the best time of the year for sports.
It's funny you mentioned the Nuggets last. That's the reason I tweeted the Jeff Green Georgetown picture was because of the dunk last night. So
I don't know if you saw my tweet today. I was in the background of that picture of the dunk. Yeah. I'm in the back right corner, bottom right corner. In my desk.
That's funny. I didn't see. I'll have to take a look back at that. Well, what do you got going on, Chris, this week? Golden Broom, you guys got any episodes going?
We will be live Tuesday night, somewhere between 7:30, 8:30. We don't have a set time, obviously, because my host daughter is playing softball.
Okay.
So it depends on her game times. We'll be revealing our newest top 25, as well as this week's Golden Broom winner for the best sweep in college baseball for the week.
Right.
And we got some pretty good, interesting stuff. We're coming out with a all-name team in college baseball history, which will be certainly a fun episode.
Hey, Chris, my GC Lopes are top 25 in the country, by the way. So Lopes up, baby.
Yes,
the LAC, baby, the LAC showing out.
Very good program over there.
Hey, how did they draw in Denver?
We had a whole section, like a whole section of the first level was all student section.
Okay,
so it was unreal. Like I mean, there's a lot of Colorado to GCU ties. So I had a bunch of friends that came into town for the game. The Havocs drove people out and also flew a charter plane of only GCU students, to say the least. So yeah, Jerry Colangelo's money is being used very, very well. I'll put it that way.
And there's another tie with Nico is the coach at Grand Canyon University is one Bryce Drew, who is the only coach that went winless in the SEC in basketball in SEC history.
And got hired.
Hey, I don't care. He won the 2 WAC championships. I don't give a damn about what he did.
It doesn't matter at this point. That's all hogwash. Well, Case, I know you might be doing the show again with us this week. Appreciate you jumping on with me. doing with you 3 out of 4 of these with me in a row. So appreciate that. Appreciate you taking the time to do that with me.
Yeah, no doubt, man. It was a lot of fun. Came up just like the Zags 3 out of 4, not too bad. So we made it there. We were just not but I did make it to the finish line. So
You did make it. Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do a couple. I'll probably try to do a couple next week. Got to do one with the Final Four there at least.
Yeah,
do want to wrap it up, but we already done all these games. Might as well do the final 2 here. See where we're at with it. Just to let it know, my son Xavier does want me to let you know that he is picking the Owls to advance, or the Owls, and he's picking UConn to go all the way. So those are his 2 meetings there, and he's got UConn finishing it off. So little shout out to my son there. He joined us the last couple nights, so we'll see what he's got there with us. So Nico, appreciate you taking some time on a Sunday evening joining us. Chris, you've done it with me again. I think maybe 3 out of 4 as well here.
Three out of 4, yes, sir.
So you're also doing the Gonzaga dance here, I guess. So we appreciate that here on Variety Sports. Please be sure to follow us at VSN Collegiate. We're trying to just grow the channel here, like I got at the bottom. Help us out. You know what I mean? We're trying to put content out. We need your help in that regard, and helping us spread it out, and helping us, get our content out, and liking it and subscribing it. So we just appreciate anybody that's tuned in for a little bit here. Been getting pretty good numbers on it. So thank you. And guys, till next time. Peace. Later.